Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Micah. Welcome to my hobby channel, Floating in Dreams, where I like to talk about all things fashion and makeup. And in today's makeup related video, we will be chatting about eyeshadow palettes, which is my favorite thing. And if you don't know, I like to come on here every couple of months and give you the full lowdown of a roundup of at least 10 eyeshadow palettes that were new to me that I tried, did all the swatching, did all the looks, used every single shade in the palette, and then I like to come on here and give you my review. Now, I don't go about these videos in a ranking style. I know that's very popular to do that, but in my opinion, a ranking is only valid and of value to my viewers if the ranking is always done according to similar, conditions, and I cannot do that because every single time I just lump a random group of palettes together, and if they are just not that great, then I could say that this is my #1 palette from this round. But if none of the palettes were that great, then that ranking doesn't really hold a lot of value. So that's why I just want to talk about these palettes as is, show you swatches, show you the looks that I did, and then we're just going to chat about these. I have more than 10 here today, so let's just get cracking. So before we actually get to the palettes that I wanted to tell you about in more detail in this video, I would like to refer you to a video I already did that features 4 palettes that I did try that I could have featured in today's video, but since I already reviewed these in another video, I won't be mentioning them here in depth. I just thought I could show you them so that you know where to go. The link to that video will be down below because that is my Cool Tone palette video that I did last June, and that featured the LA Girl Downplay, the Lunar Beauty Eternal Eclipse, the Melt Mary Jane, as well as the ColourPop Stone Cold Fox. But I don't own that palette anymore. I decluttered it after only keeping 9 shades, which I keep in the Blush Crush palette. But these are the 9 shades I decided to keep from the Stone Cold Fox. So if you want to know my thoughts about those 4 palettes, then make sure to check out the link in the description box because I already gave you the full lowdown with the swatches and the looks of all of these palettes in my Cool Tone video that went live a couple of weeks. So I'd like to refer you to that. So I want to start this video off on a high note, and something that I really liked were some of the Menagerie palettes that I got in this spring. I haven't tried all of the ones yet that I bought. I also bought the Whale Song, and that is still on my to try pile, but I did already manage to play around with 3 of the 4 palettes that I bought. And the first one that I think I also tried first was the Violet Ink. And I'm very stoked that I still managed to pick up this palette in its packaging. If you're interested in the shades, however, you can still buy these shades as single shadows from the brand. You can no longer get this cardboard packaging. And I was like, I'm a little on the fence about this one, not because it's not great quality. Menagerie has some of my favorite indie makeup quality, so I knew when I bought these palettes that it was going to be great. The mattes in this are blendable. The shimmers are really, really, really good. I just felt that this was a lot more blue leaning than I had expected from seeing other people using this on their channel. So I feel that these 2 shades make the entire palette skew more ink than violet. It definitely has the mix of those 2 shades, and you can definitely create a more violet lilac-y kind of look with this. You can definitely do that. So the quality, nothing wrong with it. It's just that I would have want one of these 2 shades to be more purple to make this more of a purple palette. It's just color story wise, it wasn't exactly what I had expected. On me, it just looked very blue toned, and that can also do with that probably has to do with my undertone, which is more cool to neutral leaning. So it could very well be that if you have a slightly warmer undertone, that these look a little bit more purple on you. However, I did really like the quality, and I'm very happy that I now own this because I can definitely see myself going back to this if I want to have this very vibrant bluish purple kind of look. Then the other 2 that I've tried from Menagerie are 2 of their 12 pans. This is the Flight Club, which released right when I placed my order. So this is their all purple palette. So what I definitely plan on doing if I play around with the Violet Ink again is to pull in some of these shades to make that look a little bit more purple. However, this also doesn't give me the purple mattes that I would want to really create a purple look, because a lot of the purple mattes that you get are quite warm toned, and you also get some like neutral shades that are quite warm leaning. So for me, this definitely wasn't the perfect purple palette that I was hoping it could be. Are they good purples? Are these really good quality shadows? For sure. I think that this is a purple palette that makes a lot of people's heartbeats just a little bit faster, but for my cool to neutral undertone skin, something like this, and also something like this, and also something even like this, and this, it just doesn't really go together with some of these really vibrant blue toned kind of purpley shimmers. And I also felt that the difference between, for instance, this shade, and was it this one or this one? I don't remember, but some of the bluish toned purpley shimmers on me also looked quite similar. So whether a purple is a purple with a blue flip or it's more blue toned with a purple flip, on me it tends to look quite identical. So that's why this wasn't the perfect palette I thought it was going to be in terms of like the go-to purple palette for all occasions. It's not that, but it definitely has some really good shades. And if I mix and match this in a little bit of a different way, I can make this work. And then finally the Pastel Pop, and that has to be my favorite one from Menagerie that I've tried, that is new to me. This is a pastel rainbow color story, and I think this was my top ranking for my pastel palette ranking, which I did, I think, in April. So I've ranked all of my purple palettes, all of my rainbow palettes, and all of my pastel palettes so far this year. So again, I can link those videos down below. And this was definitely top of the game because this has everything I want. It only has one shimmer though. So this is another palette where I feel that it's, as a standalone palette, I can make this work, definitely, but I'm a shimmer girl at heart. So for me, more shimmers would have made this even more perfect. But in terms of pastel shades, if that's what you're looking for, and you just want some good pastels to round out your collection, then don't sleep on this one because it's really, really good. So despite there not being that many palettes in today's video, not like my previous one, which was like over 25, the reason why I didn't try that many new things is because I also tried some larger palettes. This is the ABH Norvina Volume 4, so not the new one, not the 5, but I got this in a Black Friday sale, and to be quite fair, I was very nervous about using this because it has so many shades. I have said this many times before, I prefer a smaller, more curated color story than giant palettes like this. This features 25 shades, and I feel that palettes like this just get repetitive very easily. However, when I was trying this, I definitely feel I did some really, really great looks with it. It has definitely something about it, which is why I wanted to try it. I had never tried the large palettes from Norvina. This is the only one I have from the line. But now that I've tried it, I can also say for sure that I will not be buying the Volume 5, even though it is very tempting with those purples in there. And the reason why I say that is because this just isn't my favorite formula in terms of eyeshadow. It just isn't. And the reason why I say that is because some mattes, especially this taupey shade, gave me some issues in terms of their blendability. Like, they looked a little patchy on me. They just didn't go on the way I'd want them to. A lot of these larger palettes, and also in the Norvina line, quite a few of the palettes have quite gritty shades, and some of these, say these two, are full-on glitters, and I felt those didn't perform well either. Color story wise, I think it's definitely a little bit different from other things I have going on, but if I have to be very fair, I have to say that the looks I did with this, I can also get with some of my indie palettes. I would keep the Nomad Cosmetics Tokyo Harajuku palette because that gives me the same sort of whimsical kind of vibe, and I like that formula better than what I find in here. Plus, I already own the original Norvina palette, so I think that if I make a combination of my ABH Norvina and my Tokyo Harajuku from Nomad, that I can get a very similar vibe to what this palette gives me. So let's stick to ABH for a minute because I also decided to try the Carly Bible. These two palettes I bought together in like a bundle deal on Black Friday, and I ended up buying this one for free. This one was like, out of these two, this is like the total discounts I got. I pretty much got this one for free, which was a good deal. And I still also really wanted to try the Carly Bible. It was one I initially passed up on because it has a row of cool tones and then a row of warm tones. And some of those warm tones just didn't really appeal to me. So when I saw this in real life, I was like, nah, I could do without that. But something kept nagging at me precisely because of that cool tone row. And I have to say that is my favorite aspect of this palette. But even though I am not a lover of warm tones, these warm tones I felt worked quite well on me. I could definitely create some looks here that I was like, oh yeah, that's really lovely. And that mainly has to do with the golds. This gold isn't super yellow and not too stark and contrasting, which I love. It's more champagne leaning. And this gold is a bit more green toned, and that's why it does work on me. I felt that these mattes were really easy to work with. And overall, this was a palette that actually surprised me quite a bit. The things I knew I was going to like about it, such as the taupe and those like periwinkle kind of shades, those worked really well for me too. But it was a great palette that I didn't expect to love as much as I did. And I would definitely pick this over the Norvina any time of day. So this was a very successful one. Another very successful palette was the Violet Voss Sugar Crystals palette. So this was also in my pastel ranking, and I believe I ranked this number 2. And this has definitely more shimmers, and that's something I still wanted. You get a full row of like bright but light. They're not like super saturated bright shades in a full like rainbow kind of vibe. And then you get that same shade in a more shimmery formula and then in a very iridescent, sparkly kind of formula, which I really like the concept of, and I was able to pull some stunning looks out of this. Is this the best eyeshadow quality I've ever tried? No, it's not, but this palette definitely offers something more unique in my collection. And what I was really looking for, and what the reason why I wanted to own this palette, is because you get a lot of shimmers that pull colorful and that go really well with colorful shadows. Like the Pastel Pop, a lot of rainbow palettes are full-on matte, and I just don't get the use out of full-on matte palettes. I want more shimmers. So my plan is to fuse this palette together with some of my brighter shades for sure in my collection, so that I always have a good array. And I have to say that I like this formula better than the hashtag palette that I used to own from Violet Voss. So I do really like this. It was a bit of a hassle to try and get my hands on it because I ended up having to order this through Amazon because the Violet Voss website currently doesn't ship internationally. But I was able to buy it that way and I really liked it. So this, together with the Pastel Pop or other rainbow palettes, and also that Tokyo Harajuku palette from Nomad, I think if I pull in some of these shades, that can work really well too. So this is definitely a good like palette to round things out. Moving on then to Melt Cosmetics, and the one I'm about to hold up I'm going to be very careful with because one of the shades was a little bit shattered when I got it in. So let me check real quickly. Yeah, it's still doing fine. So I pressed it back in, but it's the Millennial Pinks. And I am going to give you a bit of a controversial opinion about this palette, because not a lot of people like this. I loved it. So let me just say that, again, I have that cool to neutral undertone, and I'm very fair toned, and very often I find that a lot of people who don't like certain palettes just don't have the right undertone for them, and then they start saying it's a bad palette. This is not a bad palette. It's just the color story has to be your cup of tea. And for me, I thought that these pinks wouldn't work because they're quite warm toned. They're like very sort of warm toned, rosy tones, but it was so stunning, very romantic. This is like the amped up version of an Urban Decay Naked 3. And we all know that the Urban Decay Naked 3 is my personal favorite palette of like all time, together with the Lorac Pro 3 and the Urban Decay Naked 2. Like those are my top 3 still till this day. I still love those, and this gives you that vibe, that rosy vibe, but then a little bit more updated to now. And I know this palette didn't do like the best because a lot of people were shooting this down, but what I love is that you get these really nice cool toned gray tones, but they're blue tone grays, so they go really well with navies, and these shimmers are really lovely too. This has a bit of a duochrome. This is a lovely shimmer, but this is the one that's a little bit cracked over here, so I'm trying to be very careful. I get exactly the kind of mattes I need to round out this palette. I really like my Millennial Pinks. Now, a palette from Melt that was a little less successful for me is the one from the Beetle Juice collection. I did pick this up when it launched, but there were so many palettes that I had bought around the same time because for some reason brands always decide to just launch a lot of palettes in like the October to December season. So then a lot of stuff gets in and I've only just gotten around to trying this. But this is the Waiting Room palette from the Beetle Juice collection that Mel did, and it was limited edition, so I'm sure you can no longer buy this. I like the outer box better than I do the actual palette, which is why I keep it in there. And I also feel that this is because it's plastic and it just has a print on it. I'm afraid that the print will wear off if I don't keep it in the box. So that's why it gets to stay like that. I've kept the insert. Let me see if we can take it out. So it's got an insert. I usually throw those away, but this one has a bit more of a design to it. And I like this a lot. In concept, like the concept of this palette, and that's why I bought it. I didn't get the other one, which was the Recently Deceased palette. I didn't get that because it was greens and purples, and I'm like, I already have that in other palettes. I don't need that. But this to me was a bit more unique. You get the grays with a black and a white, and then you get a full row of reds. And I wasn't sure whether the reds and the grays would really mix. And I have to say that one of the reasons why this, like I prefer the Millennial Pinks over this is because of the Millennial Pinks is something I can more easily get away with wearing to work. I did wear this to work. The two looks that you'll see me featuring, I wore on work days and nobody looked at me going like, your makeup looks weird. Nobody said anything like that. However, I feel that I'm not getting enough like mattes that work on my skin tone. Like this matte in the middle was quite deep, and on my skin I didn't really notice a lot of difference between these two. I would have preferred there to be like a taupe matte in here. If this would have been a taupe, it would have gone better with this because this is like a taupe shimmer. It's a taupe shimmer, and I feel it doesn't really go with the grays because it's a bit warm toned, and I also feel it doesn't really go very well with the reds. However, Sod Girl is a stunning shade. The minute I put that on, I was like, yes. So for me, where this palette lives isn't in the gray tones, it's really in the reds, but you only get 2 mattes and you get 3 shimmers. So again, I feel that the shimmer to matte ratio in this palette and the shades we get to make well-rounded looks leaves me wanting a little bit more. Is the quality great? Yes. Is this unique in my makeup collection? Yes. Will I keep it around for that reason? Yes, because these three shades on the end, wowza. That was stunning. They are a little bit more wine colored, and I actually want to see what happens when I pull in this palette with my Muerte, which I have. Another little bit of a larger palette, and one that I really liked, to my surprise, is the Juvia's Place Walhalla 2. Like the ABH Norvina I already showed you, I bought this in the Black Friday sales, and I kept it around, and kept it around, and kept it on a shelf, because looking at this, I was like, what am I supposed to do with you? Like, cat? So I wasn't entirely sure, but the reason why I bought this palette, if you know anything about me, I love teals, greens, and blues, and purples. And you get 3 rows, so half the palette appealed to me already, like straight off the bat. I wasn't so sure about those warm tones that you get over here, so I was like, I got it home, and it's got a couple of very chunky glitters. I'm gonna have to be very honest with you. When I tried this palette, I stayed away from the glitters as much as I could, because especially the silver shade, I mean, I already said it before, it looks like an eye infection waiting to happen, and I don't need that in my life. So I definitely didn't really use many of these very chunky glitters that it has. I did try to use this red one over here, which in pictures didn't look like it was going to be a glitter, but then I got it home and it was a glitter. So I was just very up on the fence about this one. And then I tried it, and I started doing looks, and I think I did like 6 or 7 different ones, probably too many to be able to put them in this video. So I'll just show you my favorite ones. But yeah, it was really great. It ended up being lovely colors. The way these 3 rows combine were great. I was afraid that when I first watched the palette, these shades just didn't really seem to do much, but I felt that they really rounded out the looks. These are some really stunning like iridescent toppers and complementary shades for inner corner highlights, and they kind of go with the different undertones. So I love that. This is a multi-chrome. This is a duochrome, which nobody talks about. I haven't heard many people say about it. So you do get other textures than just glitters, mattes, and shimmers, which I also appreciated. The only row where I'm like, yeah, the one with the orange, like this shade, I will never use again. This orange I might, because this orange and this pink go really well together. So if you want to go for something super vibrant and in your face, I just really feel that this palette gives you a lot of options. It's a great colorful palette that isn't a rainbow. And another larger palette, and sadly it's been discontinued ever since I tried it, because I decided to already try this quite early on. I think I already tried this in March, because I knew I was going to film my declutter, and because I didn't like the Beauty Bay pastel palettes all that much. Wowza, I don't understand why people love that palette, so I decided to go out on a limb and try their Book of Magic palette, and I bought this as well, I think in a sale. I only paid €8 for this, so I was like, might as well try it. You know, might as well. It's again a little bit bigger than what I usually go for. It is a 20 pan palette, but still manageable. It's got blues, greeny teals, and purples with some neutrals thrown into the mix. Everybody's going gaga for this shade, but that wasn't my favorite thing about this palette. I really did like how this came together. This is sort of like what I also get from the Dominique Cosmetics Celestial Storm palette. I feel I get a similar vibe from that. This is a similar vibe to something like the Hasina 2 from Blush Tribe, which was of course discontinued. And I just thought that this was a really unique color story that really features all of the things that I want and like. Is this my favorite all-time formula? No, but I now understand why people rave about the Beauty Bay formula, because if you like very pigmented shadows and you don't want to pay too much for them, then this is really nice. It really is. It has some really good, stunning looks that you can do with this. It's got some more unique shades. I liked how it came together. It's a good one. Will I keep this around forever though? I don't think so. Some more affordable shadows, and that would be BH Cosmetics. Let me start us off with the Sweet Shop Pistachio palettes, because I believe that these Sweet Shop palettes were restocked just recently. When I checked the German BH Cosmetics website a few weeks ago, this was still around as well. I only picked up one because none of the color stories really appealed to me, save for this one. And Annette from Annette's Makeup Corner was raving about this. So I got this when it restocked last winter, and I finally got around to playing with this. And what it is a 8-pan green tone color story that is my kind of greens. Like, I've tried some green palettes now, like just greens, and very often I don't find the greens that appealing because they ended up being either too warm toned or they didn't really go together. Looking at you, ColourPop. But here I feel everything went together. You get a really nice deep shades to deepen things up. You get some bright, fun mattes. The shimmers in this are lovely. It does smell a bit cheap, but hey, it's an affordable eyeshadow palette and it has stunning quality, so I can't rave about this one enough, because I really think that if you are looking for a good, bright, colorful palette and there's a single color story that really appeals to you, then definitely pick one of these up because they are really, really cool. But the BH Cosmetics Blueberry Muffin, of course, a lot of people were raving about this and saying how great it was. It's a great palette in terms of quality. It is. I just don't like the color story. I just don't. I was hoping that this could be a fun, cool toned palette with some blues. And to a certain extent it is. To a certain extent it is. But this palette suffers from what I feel a lot of cool toned palettes from major brands suffer from. It's too gray toned. Because the only matte transition in this entire palette that works on my skin tone is this gray. So that means that whatever I do it's going to look very gray toned and quite ashy on me. I wish this would have been a taupe. If this hadn't been gray, I would have liked this palette so much more. But another reason why I don't like this palette is because both of these shades pull purple on me. One of them looks like it could have a plum undertone, so I could have predicted that. But this guy, it looks like a warm tone brown. On me, it did not. It pulled very plum, and it has to do with my undertone, I'm sure. And that's why I like this half of the palette, but this half of the palette, I'm like, no. This palette just has me wanting more. And in terms of a cool tone color story from BH, I already owned the Love in London, which has been discontinued. I hope they're bringing it back because they're now doing new packaging for all of their travel palettes. So I'm hoping it's just going over like a rebrand with the new packaging to go with the other travel palettes in the line. But that, I feel, for me, is more of a cool tone color story that I would want if I just look at the palette by itself. Could I pull this palette into my Love in London palette and make the combination and make it more perfect for me that way? I can do that for sure. But if we're like, I just get to be picky because I have over 250 eyeshadow palettes, people. So when it comes to how many people were raving about this and saying it was a really great cool tone color story, and I'm like, it's not that cool toned. Shades pull on me very weirdly and differently from what I expect them to look like in the pan. I don't get a matte brown to really make a neutral look that works on me. Everything looks very ashy and gray. So what I'm going to do with this palette is just keep it around for the periwinkles it has, because those look stunning. That look I loved. This shade is great. This shade is great. These two are great. And that one is great. Maybe this one. But half of the palette I feel is a bit superfluous. And finally, we've got some more neutral tone palettes. I already put my cool tone neutral palettes that I tried in my cool tone video, which is why they don't get to be featured here. However, there are some other neutral palettes that I tried that I still wanted to feature in today's video, because these aren't necessarily just one thing. They aren't just warm tones and they aren't just cool tones. And I actually feel that they are they're pretty much doing the same thing for me. So let me start off with my least favorite pick of the two and then end the video on a high note and show you the palette that I liked most of these two neutral palettes. And sadly, the Nebula side by side, again, gets so many rave reviews. I think if you have a warm undertone, that this is going to be lovely on you. But like the blueberry muffin, where are my cool tone browns, people? Why do brands think that cool tones always have to be gray? No, please don't, because really essentially this, and maybe this one, but that's very deep on me, that's what's truly cool toned. The rest of this is either like lighter shimmers and some neutral shades, maybe a bit of rosy peachiness. So it's either very warm leaning or a little bit more smack in the middle. Then we get some super duper warm tone shades, and then we go gray. And what was worse for me with this palette is that I didn't like the blendability of the mattes. The mattes on me performed horribly. They were patchy, they weren't great. The shimmers weren't super impactful either. Like I struggled building these up and really making them look great. Plus, I also felt that in terms of the shimmers that I get in here, again, where are my cool tone shimmers? I get one in the entire palette. That to me is not a perfect neutral tone palette. I'm terribly sorry. You know I look for cool tones. That's why I'm saying if you have a warmer skin tone than me, even if you're fair, because you do get plenty of light shades, this can still work really stunningly on you. However, on my fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, this just wasn't great. It looked muddy. I didn't feel my looks were coming together the way I wanted to, and that's why the Nebula side by side, I feel just isn't for me. Is this a bad palette? No. by no means, because I can see this working for so many people. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But the alternative, if you do have that cool to neutral undertone and you have fair skin and you're looking for a neutral palette that can do it all, has a bit of warmth, it's neutral, but it also it's got some cool tones. This guy right here, the Misha Cosmetics, the Fawn palette. And Misha is a brand that nobody talks about anymore. They are a UK-based indie brand. They got quite a bit of hype a couple of years ago, but this is not the kind of brand that brings out loads of new products, so nobody talks about them on YouTube. But because I love their Witchcraft palette so much, over the winter time they were doing a sale. I saw this up on their website, and I was like, right, I still want to try that. And the reason why I like this, and why I say, if you like the Nebula side by side, but you think it's too warm toned for you, try this. Because in a way, at first glance, this palette suffers from exactly the same thing as the Nebula and the Blueberry Muffin. Because really, in terms of cool tone neutrals, it looks like all you get is a gray. But you're wrong, because these two browns are cool tones. On me, they pull cool toned. I think if you have a warm undertone, that these two will pull more warm toned. You get a full row of warmer toned mattes, which on me, when I blended them out, they didn't pull plum, they didn't pull weird and muddy. They worked really, really well. And in terms of blendability of these mattes, they didn't skip, they didn't go on patchy. I only needed to use a little bit of product and no hard pressure to get the pigmentation I wanted. And in here, you get some stunning shimmers. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 shimmers, everything else is matte. This, what's this called again? Water Reflections. Stunning, very cool tone taupey shade. Love that. This white isn't a white, it's a duochrome. And then you get a peachy shimmer, a golden tone shimmer, and you get a shimmering deeper brown, which I've used as liner, I've used along the lower lash line. Like these two shades ended up pulling the entire palette together for me. Because if I put this gray in the crease and then these two browns with it and this all over the lid, I've got a great cool toned look. This shade could go into the inner corner for every single look I did. If I want to go very warm toned with that peach or that gold on the lid as well, it works really well. But if I just stick to this little quad here, I have my perfect everyday neutral look. So maybe I can show it to you this way if I hold them up side by side. Do you just see that both of these palettes feature very similar shades? And I just felt that the Misha was just more perfect for me. You know, these are my personal preferences. Yours will probably be different. I know. But that's like why I like to say things like, you know, if you have a warmer undertone, this might still work for you. I like the things I like for the reasons I like them, namely, I'm pale and I've got a different undertone from what is most acceptable in the makeup world. So, and what most brands cater to, which is why I usually have a slightly different standpoint to compare to most people who review makeup. But yeah, thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope it was useful and that you got something out of this video today, that you can now decide for yourself what palettes you would like to try and buy based on these reviews. And I am now currently going to be making my way through all of the palettes that I bought this year. And then hopefully I can have another one of these videos up in September. That is the aim. So thank you very much for watching today's video. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week, so I hope you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.